What happens when a late-night host pushes a joke too far, and instead of getting laughs, he exposes his own downfall for the world to see? On the surface, it was supposed to be just another light-hearted interview, another night of television where the jokes flow and the audience goes home entertained. But in less than 1 minute, a single insult aimed at the wrong man transformed laughter into silence and banter into confrontation. The host believed he was untouchable, that he could humiliate his guest and walk away with his reputation intact. What he did not realize is that his guest was not just another celebrity smiling politely for the cameras. This was a man who had fought for every inch of his career, a man who carried scars from his past and pride in his work. And on that night, he refused to let anyone, not even a famous host, strip him of his dignity. What followed was one of the most shocking moments ever seen on live television. A clash of egos, a raw exchange of truths, and the unraveling of a career in real time. The stage was set in the bright lights of a late-night show. Mark Wahlberg entered with the confidence of a man who had spent years proving himself, both in Hollywood and in life. He was there to promote his new movie, to share laughs, and to give the audience a glimpse of his journey. Jimmy Kimmel greeted him with a smile that seemed rehearsed, one that promised hospitality but concealed something else beneath. "So Mark, welcome back to the show," he began, his tone dripping with condescension. Then came the sting. "How does it feel being Hollywood's most overpaid tough guy?" The room froze. The laughter that usually followed an opening line never came. Instead, silence fell so heavily it could almost be heard. Wahlberg sat still, his jaw tightening, but his composure unbroken. He chose professionalism first. "Jimmy, I'm here to talk about the movie," he replied evenly, reminding everyone why he was there. Yet in that moment, the first crack appeared. Kimmel's words had not been playful banter. They had been an attack, and the audience sensed they were about to witness something far different from the usual comedy routine. Instead of lightening the mood, Kimmel pressed harder, his smile widening as he leaned back in his chair. "Come on, Mark. Everyone knows you just show up, flex a little, say a few lines, and walk away with $20 million. Must be nice living that easy life." The jab was not only disrespectful, but dismissive of decades of dedication. Wahlberg's eyes narrowed, and his voice sharpened with conviction. "Easy life," he shot back. "Try getting up at 4 in the morning every day. Try training for months, pushing your body to the edge, doing your own stunts, while some people sit behind a desk making jokes about other people's work." His words cut through the silence like a blade. The audience, stunned, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was no longer comedy, it was confrontation. Kimmel tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked slightly. "Whoa, somebody's defensive," he muttered. But Wahlberg was not defensive. He was determined. For the first time, the balance of power tilted away from the host's desk and toward the guest's chair. Kimmel, perhaps unable to admit defeat, went further. He leaned forward and sneered. "Not everyone gets handed movie roles because they have nice muscles." This was the moment he crossed a line. Wahlberg leaned in, his voice steady but burning with fire. "Hand it to me? Do you know what I was doing when I was 15 years old? I was on the streets, trying to survive, while you were probably in some fancy college somewhere learning how to make fun of people for a living." His words landed like hammer blows, exposing the gap between their worlds. The audience sat frozen. Camera operators stopped moving, unsure whether to zoom in or cut away. Kimmel's usual smirk faltered, replaced by something uneasy. He tried to mask it with another laugh, but the sound rang hollow. Wahlberg's presence filled the stage now. He was no longer a guest promoting a film. He was a man reclaiming his dignity against a host who underestimated him. The exchange grew sharper, and Wahlberg took control. His voice rose, but not in anger, rather with controlled intensity that demanded attention. "You invite me on your show, and then you sit there and disrespect everything I've worked for. You think because you have a microphone and a studio audience, that gives you the right to tear people down." He listed his accomplishments not as boasts, but as proof. Over 20 years of acting, producing, building businesses, and giving back to his community. "And you want to sit there and tell me I don't deserve what I've earned?" The audience began nodding in agreement. For them, this was no longer entertainment. It was truth revealed. Kimmel squirmed, fumbling for words. "Look, I didn't mean," but Wahlberg cut him off sharply. "You meant exactly what you said. His tone was final, his authority undeniable. The host's smug demeanor collapsed before the eyes of millions, and for the first time. It was Kimmel who seemed like the nervous guest on his own stage. Kimmel attempted one last escape, shifting the conversation back to the movie. "Okay, let's just move on to the film. Tell us about." But Wahlberg refused. "No," he interrupted firmly. "We're not moving on. You started this, so let's finish it." The audience gasped at his refusal to play by the script. Wahlberg leaned forward, his words flowing like a confession and an accusation rolled into one. He spoke about being arrested as a youth, making mistakes that hurt others, and spending his adult life making amends. He described 16-hour days on set, nights spent studying scripts, and grueling training to bring authenticity to his roles. "And you want to call that easy?" he challenged. The audience was spellbound, watching a man expose his scars with pride, while the host sat trapped by his own arrogance. Kimmel attempted to dismiss it with, "Mark, you're taking this too seriously." Wahlberg's eyes burned with conviction. "Too seriously? My work is my life. What is not serious is sitting behind a desk making cheap shots at people who actually create something." The line struck deep, not just at Kimmel, but at the very foundation of his career. The tables had turned. The host who once thrived on humiliating others was now the one being humiliated, and there was no laugh track to save him. The air in the studio grew heavier with every passing second. Wahlberg was no longer just defending himself. He was exposing the very foundation of Kimmel's act. His voice was sharp, unwavering. "You know what the difference is between you and me, Jimmy? When I fail, when I do not deliver, people lose jobs, movies lose money, fans lose faith. But you can say whatever you want, tear down whoever you want, and tomorrow night you will be right back here doing the same thing to someone else." The words hit Kimmel harder than any scripted joke could. His usual arsenal of sarcasm and irony suddenly seemed like flimsy shields against the raw honesty in front of him. The camera captured his hands trembling as he reached for his coffee mug, his face pale under the studio lights. Wahlberg did not let up. "What is really easy, Jimmy, is hiding behind comedy. What is really easy is pretending that cruelty is entertainment." The audience, once restless, sat frozen, realizing they were witnessing the collapse of a persona carefully built over years. Kimmel tried to salvage the moment with, "Mark, I think you are being too sensitive." But Wahlberg leaned forward, his voice carrying through the silence. "My work is my life. Yours is tearing people down. That is the difference." In that instant, the power shifted completely. The host who thrived on control had none left, while the guest he tried to belittle had taken command of the entire room. The tension had escalated beyond repair, and Kimmel, visibly sweating, tried to retreat into apology. "Look, if I offended you, I am sorry. That was not my intention." His words stumbled out weakly, lacking conviction. Wahlberg's reply was swift, his eyes fixed on him like steel. "Your intention was clear. You wanted to make me look stupid so your audience would laugh. You wanted to boost your ego by tearing me down." The audience could sense Kimmel's carefully curated image unraveling. He avoided Wahlberg's gaze, staring at his note cards, at the cameras, at anything but the man in front of him. Wahlberg pressed harder, refusing to let him escape. "Look me in the eye and tell me what you meant when you said I was overpaid and undeserving." Kimmel could not do it. His silence spoke louder than any excuse. Wahlberg's voice dropped to a quiet but devastating tone. "That is what I thought. You can dish it out, but you cannot defend it when someone calls you on it." The room seemed to hold its breath. What had started as a talk show interview was now a reckoning. The host had broken under the weight of his own arrogance. And there was no laugh track, no commercial break, no witty comeback to rescue him. Cornered and desperate, Kimmel lashed out with the lowest blow he had left. "Everyone knows about your past, Mark. Everyone knows you were a thug before you were an actor." The audience gasped. The studio went completely still. Wahlberg's expression did not change, but a cold fire burned in his eyes. His response was calm, chilling in its precision. "There it is. When you cannot win with comedy, you go straight for the personal attack." He leaned forward slightly, his voice like ice. "Yes, I made mistakes when I was young. Serious mistakes. And I own them. I faced the people I hurt. I worked to make things right. I spent years trying to be better. But what you just did, using someone's past to humiliate them on national television, that is not the mistake of a kid. That is the choice of a grown man. Kimmel's face turned white. He stammered, "Mark, I did not mean," but Wahlberg cut him off with brutal clarity. "Yes, you did. You have been waiting to bring this up. You thought if you hit me where it hurt, I would explode, and you would get the reaction you wanted. But the only thing you just exposed is who you really are." Every eye in the room was on Kimmel. His arrogance, his cruelty, his mask, gone in an instant. All that was left was a man stripped bare by his own words. The moment had shifted beyond repair. Wahlberg had stood his ground, dismantled Kimmel's defenses, and now he was ready to end it. He rose from his chair slowly, deliberately, the entire studio silent, as if holding its breath. "You want to know what is pathetic, Jimmy?" Wahlberg said, his voice calm but heavy with disappointment. "I came here to promote a movie that employs hundreds of hardworking people, and you turned it into your own therapy session, where you try to feel better by attacking me." He began removing his microphone, placing it carefully on the coffee table. "Those people deserve better. The audience deserves better. Even you deserve better than what you showed here tonight." Kimmel's composure shattered completely. His voice cracked as he pleaded, "Mark, please do not leave. We can fix this. We can edit it out." Wahlberg's eyes hardened. "Edit it? Pretend it never happened? That is your solution? No, Jimmy. This is who you are, and this is who you chose to be tonight." The power of his words echoed across the silent room. Wahlberg adjusted his jacket, preparing to leave, but not before delivering one final, cutting truth. "I actually respected you once. I thought you were one of the good ones. Tonight, you proved me wrong." With that, he turned and walked toward the edge of the stage, leaving Kimmel visibly trembling. His reputation in ruins before a live audience. The cameras continued to roll, capturing every detail of a moment that would be replayed endlessly in the days to come. Kimmel sat at his desk, tears streaming down his face, a man broken by the weight of his own arrogance. The audience remained silent, unsure whether to clap, to leave, or simply to process the scene they had just witnessed. Wahlberg paused at the edge of the stage, turned back one last time, and said, "Next time you want to attack someone's character, make sure your own can withstand the same scrutiny." Then he walked off, leaving Kimmel alone under the hot studio lights. What had started as a routine late-night interview ended as a devastating lesson played out on live television. The lesson was simple yet unforgettable. Respect is earned, not demanded, and cruelty disguised as comedy will always be exposed for what it is. For the audience, it was a masterclass in dignity, strength, and standing up for oneself in the face of public humiliation. For Kimmel, it was the night his carefully constructed image crumbled in real time, a reminder that even those who believe themselves untouchable can be brought down by the truth. As the cameras faded out, one fact remained clear: some lines should never be crossed, and some people should never be underestimated.